He was once second in line to the British throne. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor spent much of his life at the centre of Britain's most powerful family. But after controversy, speculation and a scandal that reshaped the monarchy, he's been removed from public life, stripped of his military titles and his royal patronages. His dramatic fall from grace stems largely from one factor: his long-standing association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. This is Hidden in Plain Sight, the Epstein Files. I want to start off with just who Prince Andrew is. When he was growing up and kind of in his early 20s or 30s, what was he known as? How was he perceived by the public?
Well, Andrew is the Queen's second son, born of the second family, so born 10 years after Princess Anne. He's probably the best looking of the royals, and he was the sort of poster boy of the royal family in the 1980s. Came back from the Falklands as a sort of hero. He was described by his brother as having Robert Redford looks. I mean, girls sort of mobbed him like he was one of the Beatles. He had, a bit like Harry, had a sort of certain charm. The royal family wanted to make use of him. They began to send him off on trips in between his naval commitments because they thought he was a great, poster boy for them.
Did you find during that time that he was off chasing girls, that he was kind of getting himself involved in all of that?
Yes, I mean, from his school days, he had been called Randy Andy. He had a sort of reputation for girls falling for him, having lots of affairs, and it all seemed sort of fun. And then he settled down with Sarah Ferguson in 1986, and he kind of went off the picture because he was away at sea often in the Navy. We didn't really see him. He was a kind of downplayed as a royal. But gradually she became slightly less popular. She was seen as rather vulgar. And then we began to see that there were fissures in the marriage. 1992, they actually separate, and then 1996, they divorce.
So was he loyal to Sarah Ferguson?
Was he faithful? No.
Yes.
No, but she wasn't faithful to him either. I think in some ways it was a marriage that was based on a strong physical attraction. I think she was very drawn to becoming a member of the royal family. He was under pressure to marry, both of them slightly on the rebound from other relationships. And I think they kind of fell together, and in some ways they're very suited. They have the same sort of rather childish sense of humour. They're very keen on the sort of jet set life, but the problems were that they were both narcissists. They were both not really interested in public service. They were much more interested in private pleasure.
Andrew first entered Jeffrey Epstein's orbit in the 1990s, introduced by his long-standing friend Ghislaine Maxwell, who bridged the British and American elites. They moved in the same circles, the same parties, the same social world, and from there, a friendship was formed, one that would shadow the prince for decades. It appeared to be a mutually beneficial relationship until it wasn't. Let's get into the Epstein connection. Can you explain to us how Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein met and Ghislaine Maxwell's role in all of this?
Well, it's a big mystery. According to Ghislaine Maxwell, she knew Sarah Ferguson in New York. They were both sort of expatriate society queens. So Ghislaine then introduced Sarah to Epstein, and then Sarah introduced Andrew to Epstein. That's what Ghislaine says. I mean, the conventional view is that somehow Ghislaine and Andrew knew each other in the 1980s, which I think is very unlikely. They didn't really mix in the same circles, but it's possible. I mean, again, Ghislaine was a girl about town in London. Andrew, when he was in London and away from the Navy, liked to hang around with a sort of fast crowd. So that's a possibility. I mean, my own feeling is it's more likely that Ghislaine was the sort of figure that introduced Andrew to Epstein. And Epstein, because she was a procurer for Epstein, and whether it was sort of useful contacts or it was young girls. And of course, Andrew was very useful to Epstein. It gave him a sense of status. He could show him off. He could have pictures of him taken at Buckingham Palace.
So it was an equal relationship between Epstein and Andrew, and it was a vain relationship, you could say.
They both played each other. They both got something out of it. It was transactional. I mean, it wasn't an equal relationship in that Epstein was very much more sophisticated than Andrew. People describe it like a rattlesnake and a mouse. So I'm afraid Andrew was eaten for supper by Epstein.
Did Ghislaine Maxwell and Andrew date?
Yes, I think what gave Epstein a bit of a thrill was that he dated Ghislaine and Andrew dated Ghislaine, not at the same time, but he quite liked this idea that they were kind of all interconnected.
Do we know much about the relationship between Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell?
Well, it's an on-off relationship. I mean, one of the strongest points is the year 2000. There was a lot of occasions, where they go to weddings and stuff together. It was a business relationship as much as a romantic one. So were doing business, for example, in places like Malawi and Thailand. So all these things, all the relationships, true of Sarah Ferguson as well, all these things which are ostensibly romantic actually have some sort of transactional business element to them as well.
I think Prince Andrew found him credible because he trusted Ghislaine. But Jeffrey Epstein had a reputation for having plenty of money, plenty of fun, plenty of opportunity for fun. So Prince Andrew wanted to stay in that social circle, I think really because it was an escape for him. And when it came to Epstein, it felt like Prince Andrew gave him the type of credibility that he needed to continue to run in the circles that he had strived to run in all his adult life. There was something in it for both parties. We saw Prince Andrew spend a significant amount of time with Epstein between 2000 and 2006 in Palm Beach, New York, and Epstein Island. And unfortunately, after Epstein's 2008 conviction, Prince Andrew continues a relationship with him.
I mean, that's the most kind of diabolical part of this, is that he did continue being friends. Just to keep going on their friendship, it's well documented that Andrew was staying at Epstein's homes, that Epstein attended the royal residence multiple times, and that there's obviously these flight logs showing that Andrew was on his plane going to Epstein Island. So would you characterise this friendship as quite vain, quite a social climbing friendship on both ends?
Yes. I mean, I don't think that the two of them had a lot in common other than vices, I don't think they were sitting around sharing stock tips or anything like that. It was both pursuing a good time and using the other for very specific means. I mean, I think that Prince Andrew inevitably looks at Jeffrey Epstein as a bank account, or as a loan. Just an opportunity for some fast cash. And with Epstein, there are rumors and stories about him luring certain personalities into these situations so he could eventually blackmail them with this material. And I think that that's one of the reasons that the royal family is so concerned. What potential material could exist out there in the universe that we haven't seen yet?
As Epstein's early 2000s allegations emerged, Prince Andrew's judgment faced scrutiny. Questions arose about why he maintained the friendship, even visiting Epstein in New York in 2010 after his 2008 conviction. The palace claimed that Andrew went to end the friendship, but photos of them in Central Park suggested otherwise. For the monarchy, the situation was becoming unsustainable. On that note, Andrew, your book is of course entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. Epstein's most notable victim, Virginia Giuffre, who's of course made several allegations against Prince Andrew and her sexual encounters with him. In her 2019 BBC interview, she said about Prince Andrew, he wasn't mean or anything, but he seemed like he felt like he was owed it, like it was his right. He was a prince. He was used to people doing what he wanted. Has this always been the general consensus that Prince Andrew was entitled, that he did act like that as a royal member? Yes. I mean, it was an accident waiting to happen. Everyone said, the rules didn't apply to him. Even at school, he didn't go, for example, to roll call. And all through his life, he has got away with not obeying the rules. I mean, he's basically been covered and protected and enabled. And this just continued through the Navy to his time as a special trade envoy, and then, tragically to the involvement with Epstein. And his mother always protected him?
Yes, I mean, he was spoilt. I think he was part of that second family. She hadn't perhaps been around for the first two. She tried to make up for it. I think, his naughtiness, his mischievous, he was very mischievous. I think she kind of vicariously lived through that. She quite liked that. She had to be very sort of upright, and she quite liked this naughty little boy. And so she indulged him, and no one, told him when he was, misbehaving. And so he learned to get away with bad behaviour. She
was very protective of Prince Andrew, wasn't she? Because when I spoke to Andrew Lownie, he wasn't using the term enabling Prince Andrew, but she was almost not scolding him and reprimanding him for his actions.
Yeah, I think she took him at his word. And it's my understanding that the palace didn't fully realize that Andrew was lying about the extent of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein until the leak of these emails. As we are reading these horrific headlines about supreme friends and we'll play again soon, the palace just hours before were fielding those calls from journalists saying, would you like to reply to this new discovery? So I believe that they knew nothing more than to take him at his word, and that perhaps he lied to all of them, not just us, about his relationship with Epstein.
Well, there's that infamous photo of him and Epstein walking through Central Park.
Breaking up.
In December
Breaking up.
2010, breaking up. And that's what he says in that infamous interview. But the reality is an email exchange that you mentioned of him saying, we're in this together, hopefully we play again soon, was months later, February 2011. So there's a lot of holes in this story. And then I kind of got the interpretation that was the friendship so close that he was struggling to cut ties with him?
I don't believe so. I think that he needed Jeffrey Epstein. Reputationally, we understand Andrew to be a ghoster, not somebody that is, it's just not, as a gentleman, I have to get on an airplane and fly, across the world to break up with you and then hang out in your house for 4 days afterwards. I know of stories where somebody has called him on the phone and said, I'm standing here with Andrew Morton, the biographer, an Andrew biographer, but also the biographer of Diana, Her True Story. And Prince Andrew changed his phone number after that, never spoke to this person again. So he's a ghoster. Like, that's not his style, to fly somewhere to say, oh, by the way, we can't be friends anymore.
Yeah.
That story is absolutely ludicrous.
In November 2019, Prince Andrew agreed to sit down with BBC's Newsnight, a decision that would change the royal family forever. He intended to clear his name, but the interview ended up being one of the most catastrophic public appearances ever by a member of the British monarchy. Of course, this disastrous Newsnight interview came in 2019. Why do you think Andrew agreed to sit down?
Because he's very stupid and he wasn't prepared. He was advised not to do it. And Amanda Thirsk, his private secretary, and his daughter said, oh, you just do it, it'll clear the air. And that might have worked if he'd been better prepared, if he'd been contrite, but he was neither of those things. And he just walked into a trap, skilled interviewer, and was completely taken to pieces.
We now know that he did correspond with Epstein after the date that he gave Emily Maitlis. He said that this is the date that I cut off contact with Jeffrey Epstein. He said it was December 2010, but then emails from Andrew to Epstein in February 2011 show that he was well documented to be speaking to Jeffrey Epstein and saying things like, we're in this together, keep in close touch. This was, of course, in response to a photo that had leaked of him, Ghislaine, and Giuffre, and then expressed a wish to them to play some more soon. Yeah. So he clearly had gotten so much of this wrong.
Yeah, I know, it's very tacky stuff. I mean, I think that was a sort of one of the pivotal moments in people's opinion changing. I mean, I'd known that both he and Sarah Ferguson carried on their association with Epstein much longer than they'd claimed.
Just back on to kind of holes in his stories, Andrew. Prince Andrew invited Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday party in 2006. This took place after the fact that Epstein was already under investigation in Florida. He then pled guilty in 2008, being Epstein, to procuring a minor for prostitution. While others had cut ties with Epstein, not surprisingly, Andrew and Epstein were spotted walking in that infamous photo in Central Park in 2010, which he claimed was a conversation to end the friendship. So there are a lot of holes in this story, but does it seem to you that they were so close that Prince Andrew was struggling to cut ties?
I mean, this is, you don't go and stay 5 days with someone and have a dinner party in your honour if you're going to say goodbye. So, I mean, that was just one, as you say, one of the many lies. Lies like he couldn't sweat, that he'd been to the Pizza Express in Woking, that he'd never met Virginia Giuffre. I mean, they're just endless.
Before this case went to trial, I think it was in 2022, Prince Andrew agreed to settle out of court with Giuffre. We never knew the exact financial terms as they were confidential, but it's estimated to be around like a £12 million payment, including a donation to Giuffre's charity supporting victims of sexual abuse. So when this happened and he agreed to settle with Epstein's most notable victim. How did the public perceive Prince Andrew?
I mean, it's hard to process why somebody would hand over such a significant amount of money that claims to have never met a person. Especially in the build up to that, he was saying, I'm going to fight it, I'm taking it to court. But I understand the palace's position. They did not want a prince on the stand. It's out of control then. You can't control the situation at all. Legally, publicity-wise, the narrative we've heard is that the palace wanted it put to bed before the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and they really wanted the focus to be the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. So I've always repeated that. But you're right, it is hard to process why you would hand over such a significant amount of money.
Where do you think we go from here with Prince Andrew? Do you think that this will head into an inquiry?
You know, I don't know how much can happen without Virginia here to defend herself and to share her own personal stories. Legally, I don't know what can be done. I do see a lot of politicians and certain groups trying to take advantage of this situation and elevate themselves. And I think that that's pretty disturbing because it feels like they're just so self-consumed and it's just a way for them to get ahead. I wonder if the prince just goes off to Sandringham and disappears, if the chaos will die down. Because don't forget, the Epstein files have not been completely released in the United States, and one name, one huge politician in the States could shift all attention over to the USA, and maybe there wouldn't be so much attention on Prince Andrew.
Following this scandal, Andrew largely withdrew from public life. Royal Lodge became the focus of a slow-burning standoff, reportedly due to tension with King Charles III. Despite the monarchy's distance, his long-divorced ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, remained his staunchest public defender. So how big of a deal is this?
Well, we haven't seen anything like this since 1919. Thankfully, not severe when it comes to sexual assault allegations, but of somebody being stripped of their title. And also, I think Royal Lodge had become such a hot topic because people are saying, why are we putting up with this? We don't want him so close. We don't want to facilitate any of this lifestyle. Get him out of here. I think the downfall, looking at everything, was his insistence of showing up to the Duchess of Kent's funeral, walking through the same doors as the royal family. He should have come through the back, standing next to Prince William. All eyeballs are on Prince William when he goes anywhere, cracking jokes. That really annoyed the public. And so the slow email distribution between Fergie apologizing to Epstein for dismissing him or disowning him in the media, and then realizing that Andrew had lied about the timeline. It was like the perfect storm, gasoline on an open flame. People just said enough is enough, and we don't want to see him, we don't want to hear from him. And are we going to hold him accountable? And if we are, how can we hold him accountable when the alleged victim is now deceased?
Well, I guess what happens now is we hope, or we don't know what will happen with other victims of Jeffrey Epstein, whether they're victims of Prince Andrew as well that might come forward. But how difficult, Kinsey, do you think King Charles is in right now? Difficult of a situation do you think he is? He's in this awkward situation where his mother loved Prince Andrew, and I'm probably sure he would have like some sort of deliberating over whether to protect his younger brother, but to also come out and take a stance of the sexual abuse as you mentioned. So it's a tough spot for him to be in.
It is a tough spot for him to be in. I think he likely really resents inheriting this problem. Family-wise, and personally, this has been a horrible, horrible few years for this family. This was not a decision that was taken lightly. And I do think that he's been kept up most nights trying to navigate this. Do I disappoint the public, anger the public, and choose family over the firm, or do I have to have a backbone and cut this tumor out? And I do believe that he chose the firm over family in this position for the sake of the future of the monarchy.
How decisive do you think Prince William has been in all of this?
I do think that Prince William has had a hand in this decision. He's more matter of fact, he's more conscious of the optics, and likely did not want to inherit this problem as well. And, you know, obviously we love King Charles and want him to be around for a long time, but I think that Prince William wanted to nip this problem in the bud before it was a King William issue.
One of the main things that came out of a BBC interview from 2019 with Virginia Giuffre is that she was speaking about Prince Andrew and she said that he wasn't mean or anything, but he seemed like he felt like he was owed it, like it was his right. He was a prince. He was used to people doing what he wanted. So is that a common consensus about Prince Andrew, that he is entitled, that he is a bit of a brat?
Absolutely. I mean, that really is the way that you hear a lot of former employees that are fearless talk about Prince Andrew. Just an arrogance that we've even seen ourselves in watching the BBC interview. Delusion.
Well, I think the public are really outraged at the moment. They want to see some justice, and they feel that he should be investigated by the police. And if he is found guilty of various crimes, he should be charged and he should be prosecuted. And if necessary, he should go to prison.
How likely do you think that will be, though?
I think that's quite likely.
Wow, that he'll face prosecution and jail time.
Yes, and misconduct in public life. I mean, there are a whole series of things they could come after him for. There's a private prosecution that's been launched today by Republic. So I think he should be very worried. I mean, the public are not going to accept anything less than justice for these victims. And I think, you know, they're going to have to really take this seriously. In the past, they've kind of brushed it under the carpet and said there was nothing to see here. I'm very happy to help the authorities with material that wasn't in the book. And so I do think that there's a very good chance that we will see him standing trial.
Today, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is largely out of public life, his royal role and reputation permanently damaged. He denies the allegations against him, leaving the monarchy to manage a prince who became a global liability. In our next episode, we turn to one of the most influential and controversial names in American politics, Donald Trump. His long-standing social ties to Epstein, and how the Epstein story collided with Trump's rise and with the modern conspiracy movement he helped ignite.